Alright, how to appeal perfectly to your target audience. Your target audience are segmented into different kinds of people that encompass the general public as a whole. There's like five. There's the innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and the laggards. Whenever you want to define a target audience, in the beginning you want to target and understand the early majority and the innovators. The people who are at the very beginning of the product cycle and who will jump on the first opportunity to your product or service. Because the innovators, they're the people who have been waiting for someone like you to come along, and the early adopters are people who see the practicality and see the long-term use and long-term longevity of using your product or service. So when it comes to defining a target audience, define certain personas who are within the early majority and the innovators. The innovators are people who have been waiting for a product or service like you to come along, been waiting for this technology to be applied, or finally found somewhere that can fulfill their long desired demand or need. Let's take my other business, a hemp idea business. My early adopters are people who love hemp and cannot find somewhere to buy it online. So I will define them. I will define their income, their age, gender, demeanor, what makes them get out of bed in the morning, what excites them, what scares them, all sorts of other personas and different adjectives, and create content that raises awareness and educates those specific people whom I've defined as my early adopters, the people who love hemp but don't know where to find it online. So I'm creating content and raising awareness that will help to educate those specific set of people. And then I'm defining who are the early majority, who are the people who like hemp, see the benefits of it, but haven't really thought about using hemp as a product, haven't really thought about using it in their day-to-day life. So I'll create content that's specifically aimed at them in order to bring them on board. And this content educates them and raises awareness and builds trust, and both of these people then start to see me as an authority, and they start to know, like, and trust me and my business. And when I have them under my fold or a part of my community, I can then start to define who are the early majority by building like brand champions, building established content, building reviews and trust, and getting people in the marketplace and in the world to talk about me, whether in the press or in the media, or getting content that's shared. Because to go from the early majority and the innovators to the from the early adopters to the early majority, and the early majority is the first signs of going mainstream, you need to have the mainstream people. They need at least 3 of their friends talking about you in one way or another, and they need to see all the wrinkles and problems ironed out, and they need to see how and why they need to see the practicality of using you, and they need to see evidence enough that you are what they need and you are something worthwhile having and something worthwhile using. If you can't persuade the early majority, or if you can't persuade the innovators and the early adopters as to why you are the place to be and who to work with, who to buy from, then the early majority, the first part of the mainstream, will not trust you and they will not really appreciate you. They're not very techy, they're not very specialised. The early mainstream, they just want something that can work. They want to go into a shop, understand the sizes, understand the clothing, understand the specialisation, and all that kind of stuff, add it to the cart and pay and check out. The early innovators and the early adopters, they're more interested about what you do, and they're more likely to be brand champions. They're more likely to communicate you with feedback and give you ideas and share thoughts and feelings. They're more likely to interact with you. The majority, the mainstream, they want to come in and buy from a trusted source, and some of them might care, some of them might do more things, but the majority of them will buy. At which point then you then move on to the late majority, which is at which point is going full mainstream, where you start to become a household name. When you're a household name, well, as you move on to each segment, you need to reinvent your business, ever so slightly, of course, and start to understand who the new kind of people you're appealing and what their needs and requirements are. Because the people who are in the early majority, they'll have different requirements and different needs, and they'll want different products as well, and they'll want different kind of information than those who are the early adopters. You want to go for the first two, innovators and early adopters, understand who your target audience is, the personas, what they need, what their desires or what their problems are, and pivot ever so slightly, finding new products, new kind of ways to market, new kind of things to teach the early majority about. This also helps to go mainstream as well, alongside, people talking about you. If you can create stuff that the early majority like and trust and appreciate, and it solves their problem, then they're more likely to accept your product. And once you got those, the early majority, the late majority tend to just follow, tend to just avalanche. There's that saying, success breeds success, is very accurate in this world. And once the early majority are on, it's then a case of maintaining your foothold in the community and in the world and being relevant, up to date, so on and so forth. You look at companies like GE, who are over 100 or so years old and maybe not GE, let's take Walmart. They go from a single store to another community, to a state, and then when they start to go national, the whole game changes. The logistics, the products, the pricing, everything changes. Every time you go to the next stage, your business needs to change and reflect and change along with the increased demand. And the laggards, most of the time, the people at the very end of the spectrum, aren't really worth targeting, because they are the people that will buy mobile phones when rotary phones are no longer in production and no longer used. They're the people that will use your product when there's no other alternative, when there's no other way to repair their old Model T1, then they'll start using a Honda Jazz or stuff like that. And each of us are on different segments of the spectrum for different products. Like, say, the latest music, I'm probably a late majority. I'm not really going to be jumping on board or really be paying much attention to what's happening in the music industry, or same with fashion, or similar with cars. I'm certainly late majority there. But when it comes to information technology, I'm probably in the early majority. And probably when it comes to hemp or understanding hemp or hemp technologies or news, probably early majority. And eventually an innovator as well. So you've got to understand who your target audience are and whereabouts they are on this spectrum. Because to market to each different spectrum will require different levels of education, different kinds of content, different kinds of platforms. You've got to understand who they are and what will appeal and what will not appeal to each one. Because if you want to go from obscurity to mainstream, you've got to understand who the customers are and who are buying from you. Now, there's a very good book that I learned the majority of this from, called Crossing the Chasm. I wrote about this also in a blog, so check out the blog below. There should be a link to it. If you haven't already, subscribe. Check out the book as well, Crossing the Chasm. Very interesting book, talking about, it's essentially like marketing slash human what's the word I'm looking for? Human personality traits, and understanding different kinds of markets and waves, and understanding how things go into the mainstream. Like most things in life, it's a formula. It's a sequence. It's a process. So check out that book below. There should be a link, and check out my blog as well. If you haven't already, subscribe. There is way more stuff to come. There's so much more information, so much more knowledge on the way, so much more cutting edge ideas on the way. Subscribe. Click on the link below. Click on the red button below. Subscribe. Much more to come. But I'll see you next time. Bye for now.